15th, 2018 morning session of the Portland City Council. It is a beautiful day in August. Carla, please call the roll.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'll turn. Saltzman?
Here.
Udaly? Fritz?
Here.
Fish?
Here, it's a beautiful day, Mayor, but my son's soccer tryouts at high school were canceled today because of air quality. The district sent out a memo saying no outdoor sports today, so this thing is impacting lots of people, the haze.
So everybody collectively wish for, pray for, hope for the breeze to pick up. And I think it is actually supposed to.
They're rescheduling for tomorrow. They're hoping for the best.
Wheeler?
Oh, you know what? I never said I'm here. And that'll come as a huge shock to everybody. I'm here. Good morning. Good morning, Legal Counsel.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do so with a thumbs up. If you want to express you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Very good. Thank you. First up is communications. This is an opportunity for people to address the council on any subject they wish and express their opinions. It's a listening session. Carla, please call the first individual.
Item 846, request of Tia Zilbertstein to address council regarding failure of Portland leadership to keep protests safe.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very good. Could you please call Sarah as well?
Okay, 847, request of Sarah Hobbs to address council regarding recent protests.
Very good. Thank you.
Good morning, City Council, Mayor Wheeler. My name is Tia Zilberstein. I'm a native Portlander and a mom. And I'm here to discuss how Portland police have been behaving during the political demonstrations in our city. On Saturday, June 30th, Portland, Oregon, experienced perhaps its worst scene of open political violence in living memory. This is a quote from the article in Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper. I want to know why, on June 4th, 2017, police used flashbang grenades on largely peaceful protesters, then arrested them as a group without a warrant and required them to be photographed with their IDs before being freed. I also want to know why police cooperated with far-right extremists to arrest demonstrators in that protest. I want to also know why on June 30th, 2018, the police opened the police line and allowed one group of people who were armed with sticks to engage with another group, Antifa, who were stripped of those same weapons before being allowed into their demonstration. I also want to know why on June 4th, 2018, the police opened the police line and allowed one group of people who were armed with sticks to engage with another group. The police launched first flashbang grenades into the crowd of protesters, almost killing one protester and injuring a number of others. As a citizen, I want to know that I can join in any side of a demonstration and be protected by the police. Favoritism and outright attacks on demonstrators cannot be the behavior of the Portland police and cannot be supported by the people overseeing them, who are Chief Outlaw and Mayor Wheeler, and I'm not sure exactly who else, but you are the people who are in charge of this. As a citizen, the far-right-wing protesters are being shipped in from out of state by the same groups, Patriot Prayer, Proud Boys, and other violent white supremacists that were responsible for the deaths and violence in Charlottesville, North Carolina. These groups promote violence against anyone who doesn't agree with them. You know this. You know these are not peaceful people, and you know they were a group whose purpose was to cause mayhem in Portland. So why did you allow this? Why are the newspapers reporting that the police see them as more mainstream and favor them a violent pro-fascist anti-American group over the safety of Portlanders. Why is Portland police regularly seen across the world as making violent situation worse? We are now becoming known as a city that supports fascists. I don't believe this is what you want your legacy to be seen as, Mayor Wheeler. I want to know that people in this community are going to be safe when we go to express our opinions in public. I want to know at least that the Portland police are not going to endanger us because of what side of a protest we are on. I want to know that the Portland police policy on demonstration has been, and I want to see, and why we're seeing this pattern of police violence against Portlanders at demonstrations. And is there a policy that favors one group over another and favors violence over self-defense? Please explain.
Very good. And by the way, communications is not the opportunity to interrogate the City Commission, but I do want to respond to what you said because you've asked some very specific questions. First of all, there is no specific policy that favors one group over the other. Legally, and you asked a question, why are they allowed to come here? The First Amendment of the United States Constitution gives people the right to assembly and the right to express themselves, even if that expression is abhorrent and reprehensible. And I'm sure if you talk to some folks here from the ACLU, they will confirm that that is the case. That being the case, the role of the police bureau is to keep groups separated, particularly those who in advance of the demonstration make it clear through social media or other means that their intention is actually to get into it, to have what Willamette Week described as a, quote, sanctioned street fight, unquote. And so then the question becomes, which tactics do the police bureau use? And I will simply parrot what Chief Outlaw has already said with regard to the tactics. There is going to be an investigation of all the tactics used, including potentially an outside review. She had expressed some concern about injuries that had taken place during that protest, and I expressed similar concerns. She made a decision as she can as the command and control leader for the Portland Police Bureau to suspend the use of certain tactics until that review has become clear. And I really want to hone in on something you said because it's been what's keeping me up at night, which is the community voice in opposition to hate and to violence as a means of expressing political views. In San Francisco, it wasn't just the mayor who said, we don't want this here and we abhor these perspectives of hate and violence and bigotry. It was a broad swath of the community, a broad swath of the political leadership. It was bipartisan, it was local, it was around the state, and they were able to dissuade this kind of activity, at least in one circumstance. And as you know, a year ago in June, I took what I believed to be a principled legal and constitutional stand asking the Patriot Prayer Group and their affiliates not to come to the city of Portland. I knew constitutionally I could not prohibit it, but I also understood that with rights come responsibilities. And I felt coming to our city merely days after a double murder on the MAX train and a severe injury and 2 young women being terrorized in a very hateful, racist manner, I did not think it was a good idea for people to come here and protest, particularly given the affiliation of the then alleged perpetrator with the people coming to our city. And as you'll recall, I stood alone. It was a very lonely couple of weeks while not only the local folks excoriated me for allegedly stepping on people's constitutional rights, but dozens of editorial boards around the United States and some overseas excoriated me. And in retrospect, I have no regrets about the decision I made. I believe there was an imminent threat, and unfortunately, my worst fears were realized several weeks later in Charlottesville. But we, as a community, need to have a unified voice on this subject. I will continue to do what I need to do as the police commissioner to be ensuring that our chief, who has command and control authority over the police bureau, is impartial to the message. They cannot be partial to one side or to the other. Their job is to protect safety, protect lives, protect property. But over here, as mayor, I want to work with people in the community who agree with me that when people come here from out of state and they seek to create a violent or provocative situation in our community, we should stand together as a community and say that is not acceptable. We do not want you to come here to our community and to create havoc that potentially puts our residents and our lives and property at risk. And so going forward, I hope we don't continue to be divided on this subject. I hope we are unified as a community. But I appreciate your testimony, and I thank you for raising the questions. Good morning.
Okay, for the record, my name is Sarah Hobbs, and having become political riot response team collateral damage during the riot in May Day that got me apologies from everybody because it was so wrong, I've come today very triggered about what happened at the recent protests. So I want to start with a quote from I wonder, when an officer is handed a grenade launcher and a bag of shells, have they ever really practiced firing down a city street? My guess is no. Charles Maslow, professor at Northern Michigan University and former director of the Weapons and Equipment Research Institute. A person who is engaging in their guaranteed constitutional right to protest has the right to expect that the people who are sworn to protect the peace are not the ones who will become the aggressors. I often tell cops, you don't have to like us, but you do not have the right to hurt us. Portland Police Bureau's use of flashbangs shot into crowds put protesters at grave risk. On August 4th, a person got hit in the head. Another suffered third-degree burns. As the expert I quoted at the beginning of my testimony stated, these are used after a little training. Rethink their use? No. It is time to remove them from the Portland Police Bureau arsenal.
Thank you, Sarah. And as you know, all of this is a subject of investigation and potentially litigation. I personally believe the police officers have a very, very difficult role to play here in keeping people separated. And as the chief has said, and I support our chief and I support our police bureau, they have to be a learning organization. And as I indicated, the chief has made some decisions about tactics until the results of the investigation can be completed. And that's really all we can say on that subject right now. But I appreciate what you're saying. Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you for being here. I just wanted to tell both you and people at home that there's an opportunity for a peaceful protest on Sunday, or a peaceful demonstration of love, and that is the Walk for Immigrants and Refugees, which will be at Gateway Discovery Park starting at 11 o'clock on Sunday. That's 106th and Halsey Northeast, and there's also simultaneously going to be events happening at Knott Park close by, which is where the walk is going to go from. So I've seen you there before.
That is a highlight for me, and those are the events right now that are giving me hope, because I posted to my Facebook page yesterday, the only thing that's keeping me here in Portland at this point is OHSU, because they've got national experts for a very rare disorder I have, or I'd be out of here. I'm tired of the going on. But yes, the walk with refugees and immigrants is a highlight of mine every year, and I hope to see you all.
Yeah, and Sarah, thank you for your myriads of services to the community. You're very open about your health afflictions, but you bring a high degree of energy to so many good causes in the community, and we're all appreciative. Thank you. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Next individual, please.
Item 848, a request of Robert West to address council regarding ICE protest violence.
I don't see Mr. West here. Next individual, please.
849, request of Preston Farrow to address council regarding homelessness.
Is Mr. Farrow here? I don't see Mr. Farrow. Next individual, please.
Item 850, request of Scott Robinson to address council regarding Portland Police Department.
Good morning and welcome.
Hi, my name is Scott Robinson. I'm here today to talk to you about my experience with the Portland Police Bureau. After I was viciously assaulted and severely injured, my jaw was broken. They call it a Lefort 2 facial fracture. When the police officer called to make a report at my request, officer asked, "Do you really think it will make a difference?" I asked why. He said, "My partner saw you on your front porch yelling at drug dealers going by." Well, just then I realized that the investigation was over, or rather wasn't going to be investigated. The police officer then showed my ID to his partner, and in fact, I was the wrong person, being identified as the person on the front porch. He forgot to include that it was a vape that he used to strike me 5 times in my face. Then by activating my vape, he burned my thighs so badly that I have varicose capillaries. I'm done. This has brought me great fear in my life. Not only that my assailant is still out among the general population in Northwest downtown Pearl District, but I'm even more fearful of the Portland Police Bureau because of all the complaining and work I've had to do to try to get justice. I don't even have the right to be seen before a judge to rule out a Measure 11 crime because it has already been made by the Portland Police Bureau Central Precinct.
Thank you for your testimony, and I want to bring to your attention an avenue that you may or may not be aware of. For purposes just like this, there is an independent review process that is completely separate from the City Council and separate from the Portland Police Bureau. I would encourage you to go to the 3rd floor and visit the auditor's office, and they can introduce you to the independent police review process, and you can file with them. They conduct completely separate independent investigations.
Yes, it's been done, and it was too late, so it's been forwarded to the chief.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Laquita Lanford, and good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Scott and I work at Urban League of Portland, and Scott is a client of ours. And during this incident, which was probably about a year ago, when he came down to the Urban League for seeking some sort of resolution or just some information. The information that I provided was exactly what you had just provided to him. I contact Irene. I'm a previous member of the COAP. I was one of the first persons to be on that board and that committee, and so I'm very familiar with a lot of the processes just, throughout that time. And I felt discouraged as well with Scott because he was very much not feeling that he can be able to be out in community. And so I tried my best. I kept running into some of the snags through the process, and therefore we weren't able to get a resolution. So this has been going on about a year. When he reached out to me to advocate for him and speak with him today, I agreed to do that because I know how traumatizing that it is. I work as a housing advocate every single day within our community. I'm on the ground, so I hear and see a lot of things, and I just know that the engagement with our Portland police is not, it's just not a fair shot when you're trying to get some resolution with anything that needs to happen. There's too many processes, too many barriers.
It can be daunting. And Scott, if you wouldn't mind, if you feel comfortable, and it's certainly up to you, the gentleman over there is Mustafa. He works with me. If you'd like to leave your contact information, I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with you. If that's helpful.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both. The consent agenda, Carla, if any items have been pulled?
Yes, we have a request for 859.
Very good. Please call the roll on the remainder.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. First item is item number 851. If you could please read that item.
Proclaim August 25th to be Salmon Safe IPA Day.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. We are very excited to welcome an all-star panel today, and I'm going to invite you up now, and I have a few words to say. Would Dan Kent, the Executive Director of Salmon Safe, come forward? Gail Goshi of Goshi Farms. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Perfect.
Kurt Widmer, where have I heard that name? Already made the mistake of saying hello to Kurt today, but it turns out it was Rob. Kurt is here, of course, of Widmer Brothers Brewing, and Christian Ettinger of Hopworks Urban Brewery. And we're delighted to have all four of you. Salmon Safe is an important partner of the cities, and together we're working to promote watershed health and bring salmon and other native species back to our local rivers and streams. On August 25th, Salmon Safe will host the first ever Salmon Safe IPA Festival. It's a celebration with more than 20 local and national breweries who make Salmon Safe beer for this special occasion. Before I turn it over to Dan and our panel to talk about this event, I want to read a statement that has been prepared by, in consultation with our tribal liaison, Laura John, and discussed with our team. In fact, it's been acted on. And so I'll take a moment just to read this statement. Before we hear from our panel of invited guests, I want to highlight an important conversation we've been having over the last several days. Late Monday afternoon, the city's tribal liaison, Laura John, brought to our attention a concern about this proclamation. Her concern was not with Salmon Safe, nor was it with the many businesses across our community working to make their products in a more sustainable way. Rather, she flagged for us that in putting this proclamation together, we'd missed an important perspective. For many Native people, salmon means something very different than it does to us. The association of salmon with commercial activity means something different. And the association of salmon with beer means something entirely different. We learned that one of the beers created for the festivals used a Sahaptin word for its name. And Laura shared a question about whether the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs or their members had been appropriately or adequately consulted. She was right to bring these concerns to our attention. In response, Dan Kent took immediate action, and the festival materials have been changed. In fact, I understand the beer has been renamed. We're grateful to Laura for her guidance on this and so many issues. We appreciate Dan's immediate and thoughtful response. And most important, we value these opportunities for learning and building bridges together, to be culturally responsive, and to work to reverse the invisibility and erasure of Native peoples. Thank you. With that, Dan, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Commissioner Fish. We've much appreciated your long-term role as a champion for clean water and a healthy Portland watershed. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to be here. Do I need to state name and affiliation?
If you wouldn't mind,
yeah,
that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Dan Kent, Executive Director of Salmon Safe, based here in Portland. Salmon Safe has been here before, has been here in front of the council before a few times through our longtime work with the City of Portland. But just as a reminder, we are an environmental certification nonprofit focused on water quality protection and habitat conservation. 2 years ago, the City of Portland became the first city in the world to complete a comprehensive assessment of its watershed impacts, working with an independent third-party verification organization, really looking across the city at policies, programs, facilities, with the idea of reducing impacts on the Willamette River watershed. And at that time, 2 years ago, the council committed to becoming the nation's first salmon-safe city. And I'm happy to report that now other cities, particularly in the Puget Sound region, are following Portland's lead. So it's exciting to see this movement among municipalities looking at watershed impact is growing. That work with the City of Portland continues to this day at bureaus ranging from transportation and water to environmental services, Portland Fire and Rescue, facilities, and others. Earlier this summer, our independent science team conducted work across the city with Portland Parks and Recreation, looking at natural areas and neighborhood park sites as part of the Portland Parks recertification. But today we're here to talk not about the city's operations, but as Commissioner Fish mentioned, we're here to talk about one of Portland's great claims to fame, and that, of course, is craft beer. And we have experts here at this table. We're going to be talking in particular about breweries that are taking steps to source hops and malt that are grown in a way that is protective of our watersheds. But before we talk about hops and malt in the Salmon Safe IPA Festival, I did want to address your comments, Commissioner Fish. For Salmon Safe, working for the last couple of decades in salmon conservation, often in partnership with the tribes in their ancestral lands, we honor the cultural importance and spiritual reverence of salmon to tribal people. What we were reminded of in the last day and through this discussion is the power of names and the responsibility we have as conveners of discussions and events around stewardship and place to ensure that tribal language and perspectives are treated honorably. Speaking of place in the Columbia Basin in particular, over 80% of U.S. hops are grown in 2 Columbia River watersheds, 2 tributaries to the Columbia River, including our own Willamette River upstream of Portland. We'll hear next from a leader among those hop and now malt growers, and the very first hop grower to achieve Salmon Safe certification.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is...
Why don't you move the whole thing over?
Oh, it can move. Good morning. My name's Gail Goshi with Goshi Farms in Silverton, Oregon. Myself and 2 brothers farm our multi-generational business. I'm a 4th generation farmer. I'm a 3rd generation hop grower. So our grandparents planted the first crop of hops in 1904. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be a part of the industry and to also be able to be a part of the industry growing our crops here in Oregon. When I am able to go out and talk about what we do on the farm, a part of what I have as my sales team is the state of Oregon and the beauty of the Willamette Valley. In our pursuit of being able, in the early 2000s, to be able to talk to craft brewers rather than major brewers, I looked to Salmon Safe as a way to help me tell our story. And I saw it first with the Oregon wine industry. I was seeing the Salmon Safe logo showing up on Great Oregon wine bottles, and I was seeing wineries promoting what they were doing through Salmon Safe. And so I looked at it, and I had great discussions with Dan to look at how I could be a hop grower and Salmon Safe certified. Today, that was over 10 years ago. Today, of the 1,000 acres that we farm as a family of hops, wine grapes now, and malting barley as well, all of those 1,000 acres are certified under Salmon Safe. And we do it as a family farm because, again, it was something that we really were doing ourselves, but maybe not communicating clearly enough about. And when we started to work with the craft brewers, not only here in Oregon, but across the United States, I needed a way to be able to help them tell their story, because craft brewers were looking for ways to be able to find their ingredients that were being grown in a sustainable and environmentally friendly way. And so were their customers. So it was a wonderful combination to happen. We now, as I said, sell our hops And we are experimenting with malting barley, thanks to the scientists and researchers at Oregon State University. This is the first time that malting barley has been able to be grown west of the mountains rather than the drier eastern areas. And so we're having, frankly, we're having a great time being able to grow now both of those crops. It's important when we look at Salmon Safe to be able to hold ourselves as generational growers of our farm really to the standards that we need to be sustainable in our business. How we treat our environment, how we treat the soil that our crops are being grown on is terribly important to be able to sustain that for the next generation. So I thank you for inviting us today, and I'm just delighted to be able to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Good job.
Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, thanks for having us here. Commissioner Fish, no apologies necessary for confusing Rob and I. I get us mixed up sometimes myself. Kurt Whitmer, co-founder of Whitmer Brothers Brewing. Whitmer Brothers is one of the largest and longest running breweries in the region, is committed to sustainability, to minimizing our greenhouse gas impacts, and to supporting our watersheds and local community. We have been a longtime supporter of Willamette Valley hop growers and an early champion of Salmon Safe certified hops, knowing that it's important not only to source hops close to home, but also to protect the valley's ecosystem and water quality. We are lucky to brew beer in one of the world's best hop and malt growing regions, and we brew with water conservation in mind, having achieved one of the lowest water usage to beer ratios in the industry. Salmon Safe certified hops and malt enable us to communicate this commitment and the highest level of quality to our beer drinkers, while also protecting the local rivers and streams in our backyard. We are honored and thrilled to support Salmon Safe and Portland's new Salmon Safe IPA Day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christian Ettinger, founder, brewmaster at Hopworks Urban Brewery. Thank you for having us here today, Mayor and Commissioners. Hopworks was founded 10 years ago with the simple idea of making world-class beer as sustainably as possible. We're proud to be the first Salmon Safe certified brewery site in the Northwest. And as a member of the Salmon Safe board, our team is working consistently to protect Northwest waterways so salmon can spawn and thrive. For the last 10 years, we have worked to create a culture of thoughtful sourcing that looks at all the ingredients that make beer delicious: malted barley, hops, and our amazing Bull Run water. Farmers and brewers have a special connection to the land and the water that makes it possible for us to do our work. Salmon Safe offers us as brewers a special opportunity to reduce our environmental impact through sourcing ingredients with their eco-label. As a community, our passion for clean and abundant water runs as deep as the Columbia River Gorge. At Hopworks, we thought there was no better way to celebrate our love for beer, salmon, and water than to do what brewers do best: throw a giant party. On August 25th, we invite the council and our entire community to the inaugural Salmon Safe IPA Festival at our flagship brewery at Southeast 29th and Powell Boulevard. We'll be serving 23 unique IPAs from 23 of our eco-minded brewery friends. They were tasked with making innovative one-off IPAs featuring Salmon Safe certified ingredients. What better way to drive environmental change than over a few delicious pints of Salmon Safe IPA? We thank you for making August 25th a day we can gather as a community to celebrate and toast clean water. For when the salmon thrive, we thrive. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is the point in our program where the mayor, we turn to the mayor, who's going to issue a proclamation.
Very good. Thank you, for Commissioner Fish. Whereas salmon are indicators of and thrive in clean and healthy rivers, whereas Salmon Safe is a Portland-based nonprofit established in 1997 to protect watersheds from the effects of urban development and farming, and whereas since 2002, Salmon Safe has helped over 900 West Coast farmers, businesses, and organizations to move to sustainable salmon-friendly practices. And whereas Portland is I want to get this one right, whereas Portland is the national leader in the number of craft breweries per capita, and whereas 90% of US grown hops are from the Willamette and Yakima valleys, both of which are home to native salmon. And whereas Salmon Safe has supported 1/3 of hop farmers in these watersheds, sharing best practices for conserving water, nourishing diversity, and preserving habitat quality. And whereas Portland Parks and Recreation received Salmon Safe certification in 2004, and on October 26, 2016, the city of Portland proudly became the first Salmon Safe city in the nation. Whereas on August 25th, 2018, at Hopworks Urban Brewery, Salmon Safe is celebrating environmental sustainability with 22 regional and national breweries brewing Salmon Safe beers at the first ever Salmon Safe IPA Festival. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim August 25th, 2018 to be Salmon Safe IPA Day in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this day. Thank you all for being here.
Here, should we get a picture?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Fish.
And let's also acknowledge that former U.S. Attorney Dwight Holton is here, a great champion for this cause. Thank you, Dwight.
Is that the IPA part or the salmon part?
Dwight, you want to come?
Sure.
Enjoy your Rich and the other one. Yeah, what's up? Rich also. And Anna.
Kurt, don't take it personally. My brother Tom, he looks almost exactly like me. He has some very interesting visits to this city. Would you mind rubbing that?
Kurt, I'm hoping to meet you. Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you should be right. Yeah, one in the middle. Yeah.
It's your reputation.
Yeah, we need Dennis in the middle.
All right, right here, right here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Fuck Ted Wheeler on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Fuck Ted Wheeler! Making people safe.
Can we get a recess, please? For 1 minute.
Come on. We ain't interrupting pictures.
Okay, again. 1, 2, 3.
Fuck Ted Wheeler!
You guys, we have an FCC license. This goes out to kids, and if you do that,
Ted, what about these kids you guys use here in your city? Let's not talk about kids. Hear voices and pictures. And then you have the picture with a voice.
Yeah, no, I know.
They got some kids you guys.
We're in a recess. Open signal, we're in a recess.
Kurt, thanks again. Good. So,
Yeah, we'll be done.
Good. Why don't we go ahead and do 852 and 53 until we get 59 teed up with the chief? It sounds like he's still working on some issues there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Carla, could you please read item 852 and 853 together?
852, authorize a contract with GSI Water Solutions, Inc. for CERCLA and risk assessment technical assistance at the Portland Harbor Superfund site for $500,000. And 853, authorize a contract with GSI Water Solutions, Inc. for source control technical assistance at the Portland Harbor Superfund site for $300,000.
Very good. Commissioner Fish.
Mayor, if we can just suspend for like 1 minute. We're waiting for Michael Jordan and Annie Von Berg to return to the room.
Let's take a 3-minute recess. Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor and colleagues. Today we have 2 ordinances requesting authorization to issue sole source contracts for technical support on the Portland Harbor Superfund cleanup. The Portland Harbor team is here today to provide a brief background on these 2 items. From the Bureau of Environmental Services, we have Director Michael Jordan. We are joined also by Annie Von Berg. And from the City Attorney's Office, we have Karen Moynihan. Mike, you want to take it away?
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Am I on here?
Yes,
A little
you are
closer.
now.
Members of the council, pleasure to be here today. For the record, my name is Mike Jordan. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Environmental Services. The 2 items you have before you, ordinances, are really at their heart an administrative correction, correcting an issue that came before council back in 2015. I want to make clear at the very beginning, the 2 ordinances you have before you change neither the scope of services or the cost in the contracts. So they're essentially the same contracts. What we have before you is an administrative issue that I'll go into a little bit of background how we got here. In 2005, the council passed ordinances after a competitive procurement process to give contracts, 2 contracts to GSI, Inc. 1 contract for technical support on source control in the Portland Harbor, and the second for CERCLA and risk assessment technical assistance on the same project in Portland Harbor. That contract was good for 5 years, from 2005 to 2010. It had the ability to be extended for another 5 years, which we did to 2010, from 2010 to 2015. In 2015, we incorrectly believed that we had the ability to extend that contract again for another 5 years, and we did so. We have since learned that that's prohibited under the charter, and so we should have, in 2015, come to you with these 2 issues, which is to make these contracts sole source. The sole source justification is that we have been working with GSI now for 10 years on very technical issues regarding the harbor, and have been our partners really to get us to this point. And oh, by the way, we are at a point now where we are moving from remedial investigation and feasibility study to, after the record of decision being issued a couple of years ago, now on the verge of being able to actually begin to implement the cleanup of the harbor. We have an exciting opportunity coming with 3 other partners, the federal government, state government, and the port, along with the city, to begin some work almost imminently in the next month or so. We're hoping to begin sampling work with an agreement with EPA and those 4 partners at Willamette Cove, which is one of the areas where we know there's a lot of human contact with the harbor, and it's one of the early sites that we'd like to get working on. GSI has been an important partner for us. What we have before you again today is 2 contracts which declare those sole source contracts. Again, we made a mistake. We should have been here back in 2015 with these very items, and instead we extended the contract by mistake. And we've been working with City Attorney's Office and with procurement about the form of these so that we can make this correction. And we're here to try and answer any of your questions, Mr. Mayor.
Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner
I
Fish.
just have one question, because I think this is a unique opportunity to give the council a quick update on where we are in Superfund. Michael, since the last big event that we had at council, we've seen the administration bring a new administrator in to run the EPA. So Mr. Pruitt is out, and Mr. Wheeler, no relation, is in. We've also seen Mr. Albert Kelly, someone that we got to know pretty well, who was the administrator's point person on Superfund, is out, and there's now a new team. What can you tell us about the state of the agency's commitment to follow through on Superfund? Because one of the things that Mr. Pruitt and Mr. Kelly were crystal clear about is that while we may have many disagreements with EPA on many issues, the administration was intent on moving forward with the Superfund process in places like Portland. Have you discerned any change in approach at the federal level?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner. I guess the short answer I would say, and I would defer to Annie Von Berg, who deals with Region 10 at least on a much more regular basis, but I haven't seen any change in the administration's, the current administration's intent to move forward quickly. And so I think our recent conversations around Willamette Cove and the other partners is evidence of that. Also, we've been making some proposals on them regarding data management and how to integrate that, and they've been very enthusiastic about working with us on those proposals. So the shorter answer, I guess, and I would certainly ask Annie if she wants to fill in any detail. We haven't seen a general change. They are still working, I think, with us very closely to move to implementation.
Annie, is that consistent with your understanding?
That is consistent, and we've heard directly from Administrator Wheeler's team that they remain committed to prioritize Superfund within the EPA agenda, so we look forward to work with that team directly.
Well, I'm also, Mayor, very excited that you and I will have a chance, starting in the early fall, to bring some early action to Council. So there will not only be some discernible progress in moving the record of decision forward, but I also got a briefing the other day on discussions we're having with the state and the feds on perhaps the most robust communications plan of any enterprise that I've ever seen during my 10 years on council. And it is to be jointly shared by the parties and funded, but a way to use new technology to make sure that people can access real-time information about where we are on all these exercises. So it's very exciting, and thank you, team, for bringing both of these matters forward.
Thank you.
Very good. Does that complete your presentation?
That completes ours.
Very good.
Unless there are questions.
Public testimony?
Yeah.
We have substitutes for these.
These are the substitutes?
Pardon?
These are the substitutes.
No, the titles I read were the previous ones. We haven't
very good.
moved to accept the substitutes.
I don't know.
Does somebody want to
Is
make
that
a
correct,
motion?
Karen?
Just to, so my understanding is the substitute was filed, but there's no harm in being absolutely clear, so I move the substitute.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Call the roll on the substitute.
Okay, and I've been advised to reread the titles because these are new
That's fine.
titles. Okay. 852 is authorize a retroactive sole source contract with GSI Water Solutions, Inc. for CERCLA and risk assessment technical assistance at the Portland Harbor Superfund site in the amount of $2.5 million. In 853, the new title is authorize a retroactive sole source contract with GSI Water Solutions, Inc. for sole source control technical assistance at the Portland Harbor Superfund site in the amount of $1.5 million.
Carla, what would we do without you? So, I think actually, my understanding is that the things that were filed were in effect updated, therefore substitute. What you're doing though is conforming the titles to the action taken. Thank you for being so scrupulous. So
Very
it's
good.
been moved and seconded.
Yep, call the roll, please.
Did you want testimony on?
No, we're just changing this and then we're doing
substitutes on the
Sorry,
table.
you're right. You're right. Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Now, public testimony on the substitute.
No one else signed up, so Mr. Lightning.
Very good, you're it. The list is closed. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Disrupt Watchdog. One of the issues I've had on this whole situation is that I think I could take a shovel and go down to that river, take some of that contaminated sediment out of the river, and I would have done more work than this city has done in the last 10 years on cleaning that river up. I really think you have neglected the river. I really think that you keep thinking you're going to wait on my good friend, President Trump, to come in here riding on some horse and saying, hey, I'm going to fund your cleanup on this river, Oregon. And then he's going to look at Senator Merkley and Mr. Wyden and say, guess what? I said I'm going to fund you that money, but guess what? You get nothing. Remember me, President Trump, you get nothing, Oregon, and that's what he's going to do. Now, what we need to do is get serious about dredging. I want to have a dredge built called the Lightning Portland Dredge. And I want to begin to dredge this river the way it needs to be done. Every year, a certain amount taken out, and then we keep testing. And again, I'm asking Governor Brown to step in, begin funding this dredge, and to have a separate bureau set up at the city called a dredging bureau. And their main focus is begin to do maintenance dredging on areas that we need to have this done. We don't have to wait for our good friend President Trump to do anything, because guess what he thinks of Oregon? What do you think he's going to do for all those kind words from our great senators to President Trump? He's going to laugh in their face because they have done nothing to get that money to come to Oregon, except make sure it's not going to happen. So again, it's going to come down to the city, it's going to come down to the state to get anything done. And nothing is stopping you from building a dredge. Nothing is stopping you from begin maintenance dredging throughout. Nothing is stopping you from sampling the sediment, which again, Mr. Wheeler, I want to have them sample that where you're swimming out there. And I want to see those tests and to make sure it is safe to swim in a river that is currently designated as a Superfund site. Again, a Superfund site. And just real fast, I asked the EPA directly. I went down to their office and I said, would you swim in that river? They laughed at me. Don't make jokes in front of us. Absolutely not. Don't even come down here. It is a Superfund. Get it tested. Get it cleaned up. Quit wasting time.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Lightning. So, Mayor, we're going to take these up together as emergency items. I think it is important before we cast the vote, though, because Lightning has raised, I think, three issues that are at least three issues that deserve a response. Number one, there actually is no federal money in Superfund, and there hasn't been since Newt Gingrich took the Superfund tax away. So Superfund is now a process that comes with no federal money. So we don't have any illusions about this. And it was a direct action taken by then Speaker Gingrich that violated what we think is the governing principle of Superfund, which is polluter pays. Anyway, there is no federal tax collecting money to cover the costs of remediating our river. That's number one. Number two, the cost will be borne by potentially responsible parties, and the bulk of the so-called PRPs locally are legacy private businesses that once upon a time used to manufacture very bad things and then discharge them into the river. One of the reasons the city is being careful and scrupulous about the timetable for moving forward is that we want polluters to pay their fair share. We do not want to shift the costs of Superfund onto the backs of our taxpayers exclusively. And number three, we will be starting this fall with sampling and with some early action, which I think Lightning and others, and particularly our friends in the environmental community, will be cheering. And finally, this is the first forum we've had where someone has proposed and suggested that we name some of the equipment that we'll be manufacturing locally after. Lightning, it's a good idea. It's the idea to beat. Since I have no other requests for naming, we'll certainly give it full consideration. And as long as you release any claims you have to the use of the name and how we license it. So with that, Mayor, I'd urge a vote on both matters.
Very good. First, item 852, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Commissioner, I think with due respect, the amount of time that you've dedicated to this issue, that naming anything Lightning would be a bit of a misnomer. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
First of all, USGS and others maintain real-time data on water quality in the Willamette River. And again, people are swimming in the water. They're not eating the sediment buried underneath the riverbed. I vote aye. Next item, 853, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
I want to thank our crack team for their presentation today, and clearly this is a technical issue that we're correcting, but is in the public interest that we continue working with GSI Water Solutions. So thanks for your presentation. I'm pleased to vote aye.
Wheeler?
Thank you for your work on this, Commissioner Fish, and I want to thank the staff. This is important. It's necessary. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. And is the Chief Myers here? Is he here? Oh, very good. He's in the corner there. Why don't we call 859, please?
How long will this take?
859, authorize agreement with Portland Firefighters Association
I'll be right back.
to settle employee grievances and revise the city's reprimand policy.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll turn this over to Chief Myers.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mike Myers, Fire Chief for the City of Portland. As you see on item 859, we are entertaining an opportunity to make some changes to the current contract language regarding some grievances and disciplinary process. In discussions with Commissioner Fritz this morning, there was some interest in maybe possibly adding an amendment. I would certainly entertain those today. I've had discussions with the union president, representatives from the Bureau of Human Resources, and we are comfortable with that proposal if the commissioner was interested in making that amendment today.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Chief. So do we have a substitute agreement signed?
We're in the process right now. I just signed the paperwork. The individuals are heading over to the union president's office right now to get his signature. My understanding is we'll have that before the end of business today.
So, colleagues, my concern is that this establishes that written discipline would be removed from a fire employee's record after 1 year or 3 years. And since this is in between bargaining, and this is obviously something that would be germane to bargaining if we were in it, my suggestion is that we make it just through the end of this contract, which is next year, rather than adding it perpetually. And this also gives an opportunity to see how it works in practice. I am concerned that for the removal of disciplinary action such as behavior or off-duty conduct, that's fairly vague. It's not clear whether things like disorderly conduct or driving under the influence would be covered under that. And if that's the case, that it would be concerning to me that that would be removed from the record. For after 3 years, the disciplinary action can be removed with majority approval from 2 out of the 3 approving parties, Human Resources Director, Fire Chief, and the Portland Firefighters Association President. Given that the Firefighters Association President will always be a yes, that means that either the Human Resources Director or the Fire Chief could vote to remove the discipline over the other's objection. And I think something to consider in the what goes into the next full contract is to require the Fire Chief and the Human Resources Director to agree on that issue. But I'm not making that amendment today. I'm merely saying that this letter of agreement or agreement would sunset with the current contract. So I move that amendment. But I'm actually also asking the City Attorney, do we have to wait until we have the signed agreement to go with this ordinance? Can't hear you, sorry.
Microphone might not be.
I don't believe that you do, Commissioner. I think you can approve it as to whatever the form is before you.
Well, what was before us is the settlement agreement in Exhibit A, which is referenced in the ordinance. And so the Exhibit A is going to change.
If the changes aren't significant, you can vote on it now. But if they are significant or substantive, then you should wait.
Shall we vote on it? Well, I'll move the amendment to make this sunset at the end of the current contract.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fritz, a second from Commissioner Saltzman.
Does anybody want to testify?
Is there any testimony on this?
This was pulled from the consent, so that we didn't have a sign-up sheet.
Very good. So I guess I have one question. I want to make sure we're not doing labor negotiations on the fly. If I vote in favor of this, am I voting in favor of an agreement that has been vetted by both sides, both parties to this matter?
It has been. So here's the situation that we're at. This might lend some clarity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So my ultimate goal, Mayor, Commission, is to create an environment where Portland Fire and Rescue can be successful. We started off 2 years ago with a 3-year strategic plan. We are 1 year into that. I think we've been very successful. This first part of the year, there are about 200 and something items on there, and we are progressing well. Along the way, the current culture of Portland Fire and Rescue is unveiled. And there are certain areas that under my command, I need to have the responsibility to manage the organization. One of those areas is I have to have the opportunity to hold people accountable when issues arise. I have a goal of getting to 0 grievances, thus 0 arbitrations. That does not mean I give everything away to the union, but it does mean that I have to build trust with that labor president, respectful relationship. Arbitrations are very expensive. They bog down organizations, and I have a lot to do. Many of the accountable steps I take to hold people accountable, which will include discipline for minor infractions, have been grieved. Those grievances then go to arbitrations, which become unnecessarily costly to the city and basically are a waste of my time.
Very good.
My interest is to solve that. I have met tirelessly with the local president to build that trust in this relationship. I feel like the union has come a long way toward what I need them to do to help me establish accountability, to begin to establish accountability here in the workforce. We have a tremendous fire bureau. They do a great job. But as with any organization, there are a handful of employees where you need to take positive discipline steps. We start with the lowest level of discipline to change behavior. That is our intent, thus to avoid a grievance.
Very good. And I like the pragmatic approach that's being
We can
proposed
accept
here.
that. Those terms are appropriate.
Very good. Carla, please call the roll.
This is on the amendment. Is
this on the amendment? This is on the amendment?
the amendment? Okay. Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment's adopted to the main motion. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to thank Chief Myers for his explanation. First of all, it's always good to make sure that everybody up here understands what's going on, but also for your leadership in working with the union president to come up with a way to get your vision for zero grievances into effect. And I think that the process that's laid out here in the resolution for discipline and also for removal from the record of discipline at a subsequent date if the behavior has been remedied is a good one and will build positive relationships in the Bureau and between the chief and the firefighter union. Aye.
Fritz.
The city needs to have a fair and predictable discipline process and grievance process, and it needs to be consistent across all bureaus, and it needs to make sure that people are held accountable on an ongoing basis. And so I am concerned about taking written reprimands are not given lightly, that there are several steps before that. And so taking a written reprimand out of the record is something that would be of concern to me. And so I'm willing to see how it works for the next year or so while this contract is in effect. And we'll expect to see positive results on all sides before the next contract comes to council. Aye.
Fish.
I have a slightly different view on this. Chief, I appreciate the goal you've set of zero grievances. And frankly, a lot of the grievances we adjudicate in the city should not go forward. And it is, in effect, a canary in the tunnel issue of the trust and the relationship that relatively trivial things go forward and take up people's time rather than being resolved. One of the hallmarks of smart labor relations is giving frontline managers the flexibility to try different things, different approaches. Right. This seems like an innovative way of meeting our labor partners halfway and resolving a backlog of grievances that just should not be going forward. I look forward to seeing the fruits of this and hearing whether this is going to change the relationship and the culture. But I think I'm loath to micromanage kind of labor relations on these kinds of things. I think we should encourage innovation, and I think this seems like a reasonable approach, which has the great benefit of resolving some grievances that just should not consume your time and the Bureau's time. So thank you for bringing this forward. I'm pleased to vote aye.
Wheeler.
I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thanks, Chief. Next item, 863, please.
Accept bid of Just Bucket Excavating, Inc. for the Northwest Front Avenue, Northwest NATO Parkway LID project, Northwest 9th Avenue to north of Northwest 19th Avenue for $1,941,425.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Larry Platt, Procurement Services. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Just Bucket Excavating, and per the mayor's comment one time before, yeah, they do have more than just a bucket. They really do. For the Northwest Front Avenue NATO Parkway LID project, which encompasses Northwest 9th Avenue to north of Northwest 19th Avenue, the amount is $1,941,424.84 to be exact. The engineer's estimate on the project was $1,998,640. The Bureau's confidence level was low. Bids were open on June 26th, 2018. 4 bids were received, and Just Bucket Excavating is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $1,941,424 and actually 84 cents, which is $57,215 or 2.86% under the engineer's estimate. The council approved ordinance number 188-283, March 16th, 2017, creating the LID and authorizing procurement services to competitively solicit for this construction. The Bureau of Transportation and Procurement Services, along with Just Bucket, identified an aspirational goal for certified disadvantaged minority women and emerging small business subcontractor supplier utilization of 20% per our standard practice. There is a total of $1,480,191, or 76.24% of DMW ESB participation on the project, including the prime contractor at $601,842, or 31%, and certified subcontractors at 45.24%, apportioned as follows: disadvantaged business enterprise, 63,710, women-owned business enterprise, $612,280, and an emerging small business, $202,359. Just Bucket Excavating is located in Albany. They are a state-certified D and MBE contractor. They're certified with the city. They're in compliance with all of the city's contracting requirements. If the council has any questions regarding the procurement, I'm here to answer those. Because the city's goal of 20% was far more than met, we did not ask the Bureau or Just Bucket Excavating to be in chambers today.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Fish. Commissioner Saltzman, I think, just got in there on the fly on the second. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Great outcome. Aye.
Wheeler.
Very well done. Thanks again, Larry. Aye. Procurement reports.
Thank you all.
Accepted. Thank you. Colleagues, the next two items, 864 and 865. 864 is, and I'll let Carla read it in a moment, as you will recall, was a resolution. 865 is a second reading of a non-emergency ordinance. We took testimony on both of these items last week. There will be no testimony today, but we continued the resolution so that Commissioner Fritz would have an opportunity to take a vote on the resolution today. If you could please call items 864 and 865, and then we'll take them in sequence.
864, accept status report on the progress towards the actions and items listed in the Division Transit Project Locally Preferred Alternative Conditions of Approval. And 865, authorize an intergovernmental grant agreement with TriMet for the Division Transit Project in an amount not to exceed $15,730,000.
Very good. Is there any other discussion on item 864 before we call the roll? Please call the roll on the resolution 864.
Well, once again, thank TriMet, Metro, our own Bureau of Transportation, Prosper Portland for all the work they've done with the community to make this important transit project closer to reality. Aye.
Fritz.
Thanks to all the staff and everybody who presented last week. I did watch the entire record yesterday evening. I was a little bemused by all the references to synchronized swimming, but that was brought back good memories of my daughter being in Portland Parks and Recreation's Tsunami Synchro under Christina Todd. So anyway, also want to thank April Brittleton and Teresa Boyle, long-time Portland Bureau of Transportation employees who are doing their usual stellar work, and also our partnership with TriMet. This vote accepts the status report. I believe that there's many of us who are not entirely satisfied with the status, that there's more work to be done, particularly under the housing and business support, and particularly east of 82nd. So I know the community wants to see more progress on making sure that businesses and residents are not displaced as this wonderful project goes in. I know that there's also some continued concern about exactly how it's going to work with various traffic and transit improvements. I'm very pleased to see a lot of TriMet's improvements in East Portland in particular, so thank you for that. And finally, thanks to Janine Gates on my staff for her excellent staff work. Aye.
I thought the presentations we got from TriMet, Metro, PBOT, Prosper Portland were terrific. And I wholeheartedly support this project. I was at a Business Association luncheon yesterday at Division Midway, and actually took Division all the way up to get to the event. And there was a young African-American man who worked in a local business there in Midway, who asked me a question and said, With respect to this bold plan to speed up rapid transit bus service along Division, he said, how will this be different than the experience that my family and I had in inner Northeast with light rail? And I'm reminded that we are painfully aware that once upon a time there was an Albina plan where people came together in good faith. They acknowledged that there were certain events that could happen in the future that could have an impact on the neighborhood. And yet light rail came in and had a profound effect of displacing people and gentrifying the area in ways that even thoughtful people 20 years ago didn't anticipate. So now we are armed with the historical knowledge of what these kinds of investments often do, both on the positive side and the negative side of the ledger. And it is vitally important to this council that we focus on the potential for displacement and that we plan for the inevitable gentrification that will occur. And we're not just making, by the way, investments in transit. Another person at my luncheon brought up the question of a new park that's been proposed for 150th and Division. There's a lot of infrastructure that is planned in these communities, which is going to have the effect of raising land values and displacing and gentrifying. It is inevitable. So as we plan for a more progressive transit system that gets people, from A to B quicker and more efficiently, and we take advantage of smart technologies and all the wonderful things you presented to us, I want to also just join my colleague Commissioner Fritz in putting down a marker that we are very concerned about not repeating the mistakes of the past. And so working with our community partners to make sure that whatever prosperity is generated through these kinds of investments is broadly shared, and that we have strategies in place to make sure people are not being displaced. And that's going to take a coordinated effort. It goes well beyond Prosper Portland. It'll include the Housing Bureau and many other agencies. But it is vitally important that we demonstrate to this community that we can have both a vision of better transit, but not at the expense of displacing historic populations. So with that caveat, I thought it was a terrific report, and I'm pleased to support it. Aye.
Wheeler.
I won't repeat what Commissioner Fish said, because he said it far more eloquently than I could ever say it, but he's exactly right. We have reinvented, or we're in the process of reinventing the way we think about development and design and community. This project, I think, is a fantastic project, and it's one that's been asked for many years. It has 4 key components from my perspective that are desirable. First of all, it improves safety, which helps achieve our Vision Zero goals. Obviously, it makes improvements to traffic flow, as well as enhancing transit, and will lead to streetscape improvements as well. And all these things are great. But when it comes to the partnership, this is new. Prosper Portland's role at this table is very much focused not just on an economic development play, but also the question of equity. Who benefits from the developments and the investments that are being made in this community, and ensuring that as we go forth with the project, and we heard TriMet commit to this, and certainly the city is committed, and I know Metro is committed to making sure that as contracts come forward and people benefit through economic, as people's economic prosperity is positively impacted, we want to make sure that that prosperity is widely distributed and that all have an opportunity to participate in the economic upside that projects like this provide. I also believe there's an opportunity to learn from some of the lead work that's already been done on a different transportation project, namely the Southwest Corridor, where the City of Portland and the City of Tigard and TriMet and others are working on an anti-displacement strategy even before we get to the brass tacks of what the transportation strategy looks like. In other words, rather than being the last one in to talk about land banking or housing opportunities or commercial enterprises, we're actually leading that conversation. And as I've said, I've thrown down the marker that we will only support the transportation initiative provided that the anti-displacement strategies and the affordable housing and workforce housing strategies and the local commercial opportunities are discussed as part of that overall project. And I'm very pleased with the partnership that's been developed there. So you know, I am pleased to see that the council is thinking about these issues and not thinking about them after the fact, but thinking about them proactively. And I was very, very pleased with the staff presentation that we received on this last week, and strongly supported. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. Now to the ordinance 865. Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Well, the money going with it is always a good thing to make sure that we can invest the appropriate amount to the planning and implementation. And thanks, Commissioner Saltzman and your Chief of Staff, Matt Graham, and also former Commissioner Steve Novick and former Director Leah Treat for all of their work on this project. Thank you, Commissioner Fish, for reminding me about the 150th and Division site. One of the most satisfying purchases that I've made over the past 5 years, and then with the council under Mayor Hales funding the master plan, it's basically ready to go now, just lacking $20 million or so to get it constructed. But it's going to be a great resting place and attraction for 150th and Division in an area that desperately needs those amenities and deserves those amenities. So it's great when our bureaus and our council works together on projects like this, each in our lane, but making sure that they come together in the end. And I'm confident you'll be able to do that as the next Parks Commissioner. At least I hope you will, with the resources being, if they're available. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for all of the good work on this. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, and everybody who worked so hard on this. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 866.
Authorize a contract with Brown and Caldwell, Inc. for professional services for the Iverness Pump Station 24-inch pressure line rehabilitation project, number E10887, for $1.1 million.
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor and colleagues, the Inverness Pump Station is located near the Columbia Slough in northeast Portland. Like the other 98 pump stations in our city, it moves wastewater through pipes when gravity alone is not sufficient. Brenda Sherwood, project manager, and Paul Sudo, principal engineer from the Bureau of Environmental Services, are here to give us a brief presentation. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, commissioners. I'm Paul Sudo with BES for the record. So what we're presenting here today is the first key step in a multi-year program that we have to inspect and rehabilitate the two large force mains that convey sewage from the Inverness pump station. These are many miles in length, so they do pose a high risk for the Bureau in the event of any leaks and so forth. So what these projects are driven by is to overall provide reliable conveyance of sewage for the city. And now Brenda, the project manager, will provide the details of the request before you today.
Good morning. I'm Brenda Sherwood with BES Treatment and Pumping Systems Division, project manager for the Inverness Pump Station 24-inch pressure line rehabilitation project. We're here today to request authorization for a PTE contract with Brown & Caldwell for design services for this project. So the Inverness Pump Station 24-inch pressure line has demonstrated signs of corrosion and plugging of its 17 ARV air release valves. ARVs are located and required at high points in a pressure line to relieve any air pockets that might build up from air entrained in the sewage. These air pockets can create areas of increased corrosion and also can decrease the flow capacity of the force main. So this pressure line has been out of service since the early 2000s because of these problems. The objective of the project is to reconfigure the ARVs to provide a long-term reliability, safe operations, and maintenance access. Additionally, this project will perform the preparatory work to facilitate a future detailed inspection and condition assessment and repair project. So the Inverness pump station system does consist of two independent pressure lines. The first is a 24-inch ductile iron pipe that was constructed in 1985. The second is a 36-inch pipe that was constructed in 1995. This first project will focus solely on rehabilitating the ARVs on the 24-inch line only. The ARVs were shut off in approximately 1995 due to the plugging and odor issues, and then corrosion was found near the western end around 1998. Because of these issues, the pressure line was taken out of service. These pictures at the bottom show, the first one shows a missing ARV site, and the middle one shows some of the severe corrosion that was found in 1998, and the last shows one of the very corroded ARVs that needs replacing. So this figure shows the approximate location of both pressure lines. On the left, you see the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant, and on the right is the Inverness pump station. The magenta line shows our 24-inch force main, which roughly follows Lombard and Columbia Boulevard. The green follows Marine Drive for the 36-inch. So the current request for this PT contract is for a not to exceed of $1.1 million. The total project cost is around $6,052,000. The level of confidence is deemed low at this time because it's still in the pre-design phase, and the cost estimate will increase in confidence as the project progresses. The construction cost estimate is currently at $3.9 million, and the current schedule shows it design completed near the end of 2019 with construction completed in 2021. The PTE selection process required advertising for competitive selection. A selection committee reviewed and scored each proposal. Brown and Caldwell was selected in accordance with City Code 5.68, and the negotiated fee is approximately $1.1 million. It does include some optional tasks for additional services depending on permitting requirements for $250,000. The disadvantaged minority, women, and emerging small business subcontract participation is 20% of the total NTE limit for approximately $220,000. And then, just for your information, we will be back for future council requests. We have 2 more projects. We'll be back first for the construction contract on this project, and then we have the 2 projects to do the repair and condition assessment on both the 24 and on the 36. So our recommendation is to authorize the execution of this PT contract with Brown Caldwell for not to exceed contract limit of $1.1 million. Any questions?
Commissioner Fritz.
I had to step out, so I may have missed this, but why are we replacing it now if it's been out of service for almost 20 years?
Because this is one of our critical force mains. It's approximately 10 miles long, and this 36-inch has been in service for the past 10 years and is already starting to show some signs of failures. So we need to get this force main up and running so that we can use it to take the other force main off and do condition assessment on it as well.
Thank you.
Public testimony.
Yes, I show 3 people signed up. Please come on up. I have Stilla Magux, Enduro Life, and Mimi Gurman.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Mimi Gurman. I have a quick question about the last thing that this woman said. Is it possible to go back and the very last thing that she said in the transcript? I can't remember what it was.
Mimi, why don't you state your concern, and then I'll have her come back.
Well, that's the thing. Oh yeah, I know what it was. So the pipe needs to get rebuilt now after it was your question to her. So how long was that pipe supposed to last in the first place? Was it supposed to last longer? Why didn't people know it was supposed to last longer and that it wouldn't last longer, and we're at 10 years and now they're asking for $6 million to redo this thing? That's my question there.
Good.
So thanks, Carla, but I don't need that. So in the beginning of when you were calling up this person, I noticed that the council has this amazing way to process and look at all the ins and outs of these reports that come in, whatever they're called, the projects that come in. And and you're often thorough with how you look at the questions. And I don't understand why we can't do that with ICE in Portland, why we can't use that same kind of questioning with the police in Portland, and why we can't do that kind of questioning when our people get shot by the police directly by Chief Outlaw's orders on our streets. It's weird to me that you can talk to people who are talking about pipes and sewage and whatever the thing is, moving buildings, creating buildings in this line of questioning, but you can't use the same line of questioning when it involves the safety of activists in our city and residents in our city.
Is that a question?
It is a question.
Okay, I will answer it briefly, and you know, I know you, so I'm taking a little bit of leave here that I would not take. I am making an exception. There are very specific processes in place for those conversations, and it starts with the use of force directives, which regularly go out for public review, feedback, input. Lots of different people, institutions, and organizations provide feedback on the use of force directives. With regard to specific police tactics, we actually have a dual investigative process, which, by the way, is being used for, there were some people here earlier before you got here asking questions about that. And I made note of the fact that from an internal policy perspective, we have an investigative process, and we also have an independent external process through the independent police review process. Plus, there are also commissions that have the ability to look at these things, and PSEP will be up soon that also has broad latitude to discuss these things, take public input, and bring people in for these conversations. So unless there is a specific item relating to these things on the agenda, it doesn't get taken up in this particular forum, but I assure you there are many other forums where this information is taken up.
Well, I have 54 seconds left. So what I would like to say is that the line of questioning, when this woman needs to come back up here, or this department, whatever the department is, has to come back up here, it's a direct back and forth at this table, and we get to be here for that. We, the community, gets to be here, but we, the community, does not get to be involved in situations that involve IPR and the new PSEP. And I know, I tried to get in, PDX Law Girl tried to get in, a whole bunch of us tried to get that interview. None of us got that interview. So the line of questioning is still something that's of concern. How do we actually make a difference with things that matter, like our lives on the streets, when there's corruption going on with ICE in our city, in our sanctuary city?
Well, I would simply say, again, we have very specific processes that are in place to review that information. You have a police chief who, and I don't want to go back and give the whole statement I gave at the beginning of the meeting, and I would encourage you to review it. There are many opportunities for direct community engagement and feedback. And in fact, we had a number of people here earlier today who are asking questions, and we didn't have a terribly packed agenda. I took a personal liberty and I answered some of those questions. So I would encourage you to go back and review that record.
So thank you, Mimi. Let me invite the team back, and I'll answer your question if you want to take your seat.
Thank you.
Let's have our crack team back. I think I know the answer to this, and it has a little bit to do with the way we take limited resources and do triage in our system. But Paul, would you take a crack at answering her question?
Sure. If I understood the question correctly, it was there's a few parts to it. One is how long do we expect the force mains to last?
Yeah.
And then why, if it's been out of service for 10 years, why have we waited so long?
Good.
Okay. So
Ms. German has nodded twice, so I think those are the two questions. So why don't you take a crack at answering them.
All right. So in general, when we set out to design an improvement for force mains, we target about a 50-year life. So it's in that 30 to 50-year horizon typically. This force main did not last that long. There was a I think, some damage noticed back in the 90s, about 10 years after it was constructed. So I think during the construction and design of that original force main, the conditions were slightly different. There were some, I think, some lining failures too that had accelerated it. And part of the issue was also tied to these air relief valves that Brenda had in her presentation, that those weren't operated. They were in a very challenging operation situation, the way they were originally designed and built, which required them to be closed down to prevent odor issues in the community, and that accelerated the breakdown, so to speak.
So we didn't get the, if you will, the shelf life for this force main that we would normally expect, and it had partly to do with the unique conditions of where it was built and some of the technology. And then the second question is, why are we waiting 10 years to address the problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the main reason is we had the 36-inch line in service during the last 10 years, and it had been performing fine. But now we're starting to see flags and concerns with that. And we know here it takes years to implement a project to rehabilitate a line. So what we need to do is get that. We can't wait anymore to not rehabilitate that 24-inch right now. So we're kind of at the end of our waiting period, so to speak.
So there's a risk assessment, and what we don't want to have happen though is the remaining functioning pipe fail, in which case we've got a serious problem because there's a lot of flow that comes through this pump station. So with some sense of urgency in moving this thing forward, and Mayor, that concludes our presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Please call the roll.
No, it goes to a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. Moves to second reading. 867, please.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder for construction of the downtown Old Town Carruthers Mill Sewer Rehabilitation, project number E10986 for $3,296,200.
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor and colleagues, this Bureau of Environmental Services project will rehabilitate aging and deteriorating sewer pipes in downtown Portland, primarily near Portland State University. It will repair over a mile of sewer pipe, some 140 years old, and extend the life of the system in the area for another 100 years. The project is slated to begin next spring and will be completed within a year, with impacts at most locations limited to a few days. Susan Yorton, engineer, and Paul Sudo, principal engineer for the Bureau of Environmental Services, are here to give us a brief presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. As stated, my name is Susan Yorton. I'm an engineer and project manager at BES. We're here today asking for authorization to advertise the downtown Old Town Carruthers Mill $3.3 million sewer rehabilitation contract. On the map is the area of the entire downtown Old Town project / program boundary that we are going to be doing sewer rehab. At the bottom of the map, highlighted in red is my project, the Carruthers Mill. The blue highlighted area is Yamhill Morrison, and we did quite a bit of sewer rehab there last year in May when TriMet had light rail shut down. The rest of the areas are in pre-design. This map shows the actual locations of the work of where we'll be doing the sewer rehab. A lot of it's in the Portland State area. Most of the 6,500 feet of pipe that we're rehabbing is over 100 years old. It's clay pipe. We haven't done capital improvement projects in this area of this size, so it's time to get add remaining useful life to these pipe. There will probably be some night work. A lot of that is dependent on traffic flow. So if the contractor can maintain acceptable levels of traffic flow, they can work during the day. But we've been working with PBOT, ODOT, and TriMet, and those are their concerns, just keeping traffic moving. Where we will be doing some night work, it at the most be about 2 nights. It'd be very limited to the businesses and residents in the area. Public outreach has done a great job. They have sent flyers, they've maintained a website keeping the project information up to date. They've canvassed the neighborhood businesses and residents, keeping people informed of the project. Their information targeted the scope of the work, the repair locations, possible traffic impacts, and then the proposed schedule, both the daytime and of the nighttime work. So the engineer's estimate is close to $3.3 million. I hope to advertise the project later this month. Notice to proceed would be given to the contractor about January, but this is primarily dry weather work, and so we anticipate the bulk of the work being done between May and August.
Susan, when you previewed this PowerPoint with me, I actually had trouble identifying the picture.
Yes.
And my colleagues might be interested in what this is and what's its significance.
So this is a manhole. Our new current manholes are round, typically 4 foot across. In downtown, we have a lot of these brick manholes. They're square, they're rectangular. So that it's a challenge. This manhole in particular is about 11 feet deep, and it's over 130 years old. It's kind of hard to rehabilitate them. You can't really dig in downtown area because of all the utilities. So we're going to put an insert in to maintain its structural stability. But
thank you.
It's kind of fun when you find unique things after looking at, hundreds of manholes. And this was kind of fun too. This is a as-built that was from, I think, 1886, and it's just unique. A little bit of artwork and kind of fun to see. Here's where we actually are dumping water. It says right to the river, and then on the bottom is our current tidal block, so just a then and now comparison. So anyway, questions?
Thank you very much, colleagues.
Do you still?
That's cool that they had artwork on it. Or doodles. I'm not sure which it was.
I was going to say, did they have somebody on staff who did the artwork? That's pretty fabulous. Very good. Any further questions, colleagues? Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you both for your good work. Next item, please, 868.
Authorize a cooperative utility agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the US 26 Powell Boulevard, Southeast 122nd Avenue, Southeast 136th Avenue project for an estimated amount of $856,000 to replace water lines.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, the Water Bureau seeks to enter into a 10-year cooperative utility agreement with ODOT to replace water lines located near Powell Boulevard between Southeast 122nd and Southeast 136th. I'm pleased to introduce Chief Engineer Teresa Elliott, who I guess is flying solo today, who will give us a brief presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Teresa Elliott, Chief Engineer of Portland Water Bureau. The Water Bureau is seeking to enter a 10-year cooperative utility agreement with ODOT to replace water lines along Powell Boulevard between 122nd and 136th. Powell Boulevard is part of the state highway system under ODOT's jurisdiction. They're conducting a project to do some transportation improvements and pedestrian improvements in Powell. The Water Bureau has some assets on both sides of the road and that are impacted by the construction project. And so they will need to be replaced. At the same time that they're being replaced, we're also doing some system improvements to improve the water system that's outside of what's impacted. We're entering into a 10-year agreement with ODOT because ODOT's project is actually phased over several years. And so in order to get everything completed, the attorneys suggested that we make it a 10-year agreement. Portions of the water work where we predate ODOT, we're actually reimbursed 100%. And the portions that we're doing the system improvements or betterments, as ODOT likes to call it, are things that we have to pay ODOT for. Because of ODOT's time frame for their construction project, we decided it would be better for them to include our work in their contract rather than having two separate contracts there at the same time. So with this agreement, we're asking for authorization for the agreement and also to pay ODOT the $856,000 that would cover our portion of the work in the contract. And with that, I invite you to ask questions.
Colleagues?
Any further questions? Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. This is also a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading.
Great.
Thank you for your hard work.
Great.
It's appreciated.
And then I will say it here for the next thing.
All right. We won't hold the suspense any longer. Carla, could you please read item 869?
Authorize an emergency construction contract with Stettler Supply and Construction in the estimated amount of $681,500 for the rehabilitation or replacement of failed pumps and motors in drinking water production wells 3, 13, and 26.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, we are blessed at the City of Portland to have the two largest supplies of safe and reliable water in the state. First, of course, is the Bull Run watershed. The second is the Columbia South Shore well field. The well field is Portland's second supply source to augment and provide a backup to our Bull Run water supply. Urgent repairs are required of some of the pumps at the well field, and it's my pleasure to introduce Teresa Elliott, Chief Engineer, who's flying solo today from the Portland Water Bureau to give us a brief introduction.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Teresa Elliott, Chief Engineer, Portland Water Bureau. As Commissioner said, the pumps in our wells 3, 13, and 26 are part of the Columbia South Shore well field, which we have 26 wells in that wells field. We rely on the well field as our secondary supply source to augment and provide a backup when Bull Run water supply is not available. The well field provides approximately 100 million gallons for short periods of time and about 70 million gallons a day during sustained long periods. We have 3 wells that represent 14 million gallons, or about 14% of our capacity that's available. These wells have failed they started failing between February and May of 2018. Without them in service, there's a risk of us not being able to meet the demands when we need to turn the system on. In addition, the well field is a critical part of our compliance with the state and EPA's interim measures while we build the treatment facility for Bull Run. We have entered into a negotiated, we've negotiated an emergency contract with Stettler Supply and Construction for the performance of the work for the repairs. The work is on private property in an industrial area near the airport and does not have any residential neighbors. Funding was not included in our 2018-19 adopted budget, but will be added during the fall bump. And what we're doing is moving money from other program contingency to cover that work. The total estimate for the work has a low confidence rating because as emergency repairs, you have to take the wells or you have to take the motors out of the wells and then send them off to figure out exactly the extent of the damage or the extent of the repairs that need to be done. That's why we were calling it a low confidence. So we're asking for an emergency contract, for the authorization for our emergency contract and to authorize payment. Any questions?
Yeah, I have just a couple. So tell me about failed pumps. We have 3 different production wells where the pumps have failed. Is this a common occurrence, or is this a coincidence that we have 3 at once?
I think it's just coincidental that 3 of them have failed at the same time. They do fail over time. Usually when we take them apart and do maintenance on them, we have a sense that they're going out, and so we can turn those ones off. It's unusual to have. So we have an ongoing fiscal budget of replacing and maintaining wells over time. It's just that 3 of them went bad at the same time, and we just weren't planning for that.
Okay, and so just to be clear, and it states it in the title, but I guess I just need to repeat it for my own edification, you're not necessarily replacing those pumps. If they pull them apart and it just needs new gears or whatever, they'll just replace that piece if that's
Correct.
the cost-effective way
Correct.
to do it.
Correct.
And they do go through a regular maintenance
Yes,
cycle? How
Yes, they
often
do.
is that cycle?
I don't know that, but I can be happy to get it for you.
Okay, very good. Colleagues, any further questions? Commissioner Fritz?
These are wells 313 and 26. So how many do we have altogether?
We have 26 that are production wells, and then we have a bunch of monitoring wells as well.
So it's 3 out of 26?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
What happens if the pump breaks? I assume the well is, are there backup pumps? Are there other pumps? How does it work?
So if a pump itself breaks, then that well is out of commission until we can bring in a brand-new pump system to go into it.
And would the public notice that, or does it just get
No, we would just turn it off. We would turn it offline and route water around to go to one of the other wells.
Okay, very
Mayor,
good.
you just said something interesting. You said, would the public notice it? Earlier today, Kurt and Rob Widmer were here. And many years ago, when then David Schaff was the director of the Bureau, we had lunch with the Widmer brothers. At the time, they did not have a single point of contact with the Bureau, so we made the director the single point of contact because they're obviously one of our biggest customers. Very bullish on Bull Run water. One of the reasons that they decided to expand their footprint here is that we have such great water. But when in the summertime we shift to a blended water and we bring some Columbia well water in, it does change the pH a little bit.
Yes, it does.
And so we set up a system with them and with other breweries where we gave them advance notice of that change. And it turns out even a minor blending has enough of an impact on their production processes that they like as much notice as possible. They make some adjustments in their brewing process so that the consumer doesn't know any different. A Widmer Hefeweizen tastes the same. The consumer's not going to know the difference, but there is a difference in pH. And so, and the concern that they have is timely notice of when we shift to a blended supply.
That is interesting.
That is
Very
interesting.
good. Thank you. All right, this is an emergency ordinance because of the nature of the issue here. Carla, please call the roll. I'm sorry, public testimony, I forgot.
No one signed up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for all of the information about the betterments. I think that's a very nice word. Aye.
Fish.
Thank you, Teresa. Aye.
Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. I always feel like I learn a lot from these presentations. I appreciate your being here. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Colleagues, we have 3 more items. They are all second readings, meaning all of them have been presented to the council previously. All of them have had prior public testimony. Now the issue is just to vote. So Carla, if you could read 871 and call the roll.
870.
I'm sorry, 870.
Authorize a joint funding agreement with U.S. Geological Survey in the amount of $1,623,235 for stream flow and water quality monitoring.
Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call 871.
Authorize the Water Bureau to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Penridge Mains Replacement Project through negotiation or through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call item 872.
Authorize the Water Bureau to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the North Jansen Avenue main installation project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. And last but not least, please read item 873.
Authorize the Water Bureau to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for the Conduit 2 Trestle Rehabilitation Project through negotiation or through the city's eminent domain authority.
Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.